Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Daniel Major on the line, and he's CEO over at GoviEX Uranium. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. First time on your show, and looking forward to it.
All right, Daniel, first time on the show, so excited to get this answer out of you. We'll get started with our Mission Matters question that we ask all our guests. So, Daniel, we at Mission Matters, so we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here, and that's what we work on day in and day out. Daniel, what mission matters to you?
What mission matters to me? I'm in the mining industry. I'm in the business of building mines. So our mission is to feed the ever requirement for commodities. We focus on projects in Africa, so we have a very strong sense of community as well. As you can appreciate, a lot of the regions we are in are very low on the global GDP, and so we actually do a considerable amount for our local community. So it's returns for our shareholders, but returns for all stakeholders, and those are very key to us and are very much part of our mission, and those are the things that matter to us.
Fantastic, and so thank you for sharing that mission. I love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and businesses on the line that are looking out for their investors and the whole supply chain. So great stuff there, Daniel. And based on what you're doing over at GoviEX Uranium, I'm interested to get your take on mining, minerals, and we'll talk about a couple different things. But I guess maybe just get us kicked off for those that aren't familiar with GoviEX Uranium. Tell us a little bit more about the company, please.
Yeah, it's straightforward. We're a uranium-focused company. Uranium is primarily used in the nuclear industry. Nuclear is obviously one of the clean energy, which is trying to replace things like coal and gas. It's a base load power. So we intend to produce uranium for that. Our projects are all in Africa. We have projects in Niger, Zambia, and Mali. Niger and African countries are really where the future for nuclear is going to go with the development of small modular reactors. They're rich in commodities. They're trying to grow their power base. They're heavily reliant on hydrocarbons as well. So, we're very much part of that whole pipeline of power. And for us, it's about building the projects which help the communities, help with the economic growth of the countries that we're in. So the benefit for us, 2 of our projects are permitted. As you can appreciate, permitting a mine is a long process, and we've already done that for 2 of our projects. So we're looking at getting them built and producing uranium for the nuclear industry.
Fantastic. And a lot of people listen to this show and shows like ours to get, ideas in investing and things of that nature. So I'm just curious. So like platforms like Robinhood, and there's a lot of other investing apps out there. I feel like they're giving more and more investors opportunities to access investments in mining and other things. So can you comment on that a little bit more from your space?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we're seeing it in ours. We've seen it already in commodities like silver, which certainly Reddit drove up a big way. I mean, I was talking to someone, I'm not on Reddit myself, but I was talking to someone the other day at the beginning of this year. There were like 4 or 5 people talking uranium. We're now talking 4,000 or 5,000 people talking uranium. So it is giving an opportunity for conversations. We see it a lot on things like Twitter and Facebook as well. So it is really allowing the story. We're a niche commodity. We're not like copper or gold and big commodities. So it is difficult for people to find information. So these sort of groups like Reddit, et cetera, allow people to talk about the stories that are out there on a conversational basis, and talk about the stocks they like. And GoviEX Fortune is one of those stocks that does get talked about, and is liked.
What are some ways that retail investors, so obviously institutional investors, right? Like they always have access to different levels of investment in different vehicles. But what are some ways that retail investors can become more involved, both short term and long term, with thinking about investments like uranium and other things like that in their portfolios?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of ways of doing this. I mean, really three or four layers. So at the top of the pile, the most straightforward way is to invest in the physical. And a retail investor can do that through really a couple of companies. One, UPC, which trades in Canada, and then the other one is Yellowcake, which trades in the UK. Now, both of those literally just hold various physical forms. So their value will just go up and down for their physical holdings, and they're increasing their holdings. So, that's a straightforward. There's a couple of royalty companies out there, Uranium Royalty, who just hold royalties, and obviously people have made good money in things like gold on the royalty companies. So if you don't want direct exposure, but you want to look at the future cash flows, that's an option as well. There's some ETFs out there as well for those that don't want or haven't got the time to go into the detail on every single project, like the story, but want to buy the basket. So you've got the Horizons ETF, HURA. You've got the North Shore one as well, URA. So there's a couple of different ETFs. Their weightings are slightly different in them, but you're pretty well getting the suite. And then obviously directly into the equities. I mean, there are now a number of equities, and I think this is one of the stories that people need to know. In 2007, when we last had a monster bull run in the uranium sector, when uranium was $130 a pound in the spot market, and it's currently down at $30 a pound. There were 500 listed uranium companies. There are now 50 listed uranium companies. So, what you've got is predominantly the survivors, the strong companies, the assets with the best assets out there as well. So, there are plenty of equity stories. They come in different forms. There are a couple of producers out there. There's the developers like ourselves. They're the guys you're looking to re-rate to go from being a developer to being a producer. A lot of the developers look at them as well, people like us in Africa, because the takeouts and the acquisitions start to begin when the market really hots up. And in the 2011 uranium cycle, those were the companies that made investors the most money. They got taken out before they could actually get around to building their projects, predominantly by Chinese and Russians looking for long-term supply in countries they could own 100% of them. And then you've got the explorers, who are just beginning the process, and you're looking for that high-risk leverage in the sector.
Let's talk a little bit more about, and you mentioned this before, about doing work in Africa. Why is Africa really leading the way on this race in uranium and nuclear energy?
Africa's very much part of it. I mean, just from an energy point of view, I mean, the real leader at the moment is, if you looked in the past where you had nuclear energy develop, it's in the developed region. So the US is the largest single fleet of reactors at the moment, with 98 of the 440 reactors. For Europe is another area, particularly France, where 75% of its power comes from nuclear energy. What you're seeing now is the next tranche coming through, which is the Asian market, where you've got big populations looking, and they've massively moved up the development cycle, but they need power to bring them that stage further. And if you look at economic growth and the link to power, the faster you grow your power versus your population growth, the faster your economic growth goes. So, that's what you're seeing in places like Asia, with India, China, being massive build-outs. And as I commented earlier, that's where Africa's problem has been. It has been trying to grow its power, but its population has exceeded its power growth. And so they're now looking at it and say, well, we can't go can't keep committing to oil. We can't keep committing to gas and coal. We've got to find better ways of doing it. So they're looking at things like renewables, but of the 54 countries in Africa, there's 16 of them currently working down the nuclear path because wind's not a big factor for them. The sun, despite being Africa, isn't always obviously around all the time, and most of them have used up their hydro. So nuclear is becoming very much part of it. Africa is still a major supplier of uranium. Niger, where we're situated, is been producing about 8% of the world's uranium since the early 1970s. Namibia now is the fourth largest producing uranium nation in the world. So there's plenty of uranium in Africa. And the other benefit that we have working in Africa is these are commodity-driven countries. In Niger, 60% of the exports of the country is uranium. 10% of the national budget is supported by uranium mining. So, they're very pro getting these projects going. So for us in the industry, we got our permit after application in Niger within 6 months of application. Now, that would take years of environmental permitting. And that's not that we didn't do full IFC standard environmental process. We did all of those things. But the government is pragmatic. You got larger areas of ground, and the government says, we need these new mines. We need to develop, the growth. It's a big part of our industry and our business and our budget. So, Africa's very key, and not just in uranium, in many commodities. It is the growth place for commodities, Africa is.
Awesome. And what a great overview from your vantage point, which we appreciate. And I know that there's a lot of people listening right now that are, you spark their interest. They're like, okay, I haven't really thought about uranium, or maybe they have in the past, but haven't really looked towards the sector in a bit. So I know some people are probably on their computers right now checking things out, and you know how that goes. So if somebody's listening to this, Daniel, and they want to learn more about GoviEX Uranium, what's the best way for them to learn more about your company and to connect?
The first thing, go to our website, obviously, which is www.goviex.com. Have a look through there. There's a lot about our company. We've got all our technical reports in there. And also, if you've got any questions, if you just email at info@goviex.com, and I usually that comes to me. And I usually respond to people within 48 hours of getting an email. So I'm more than happy to deal with people by email. If they want me to call them, just put a phone number in that email as well and ask for a phone call. Appreciate I'm time zoned in the UK, so I may not be phoning you at closing time in the US. But yeah, more than happy to reach out and, chat to people. And, it's just questions on the nuclear industry, which, we're very positive about, and the benefits to society going forward. I think that's the biggest change we've seen in this industry is that everyone is starting to realize that we need nuclear to be green. You've got to have renewables, but you've got to have nuclear to be part of it. And that's a key part. And, as an industry, just kind of on that, last year, 180 million pounds of uranium was consumed and 120 million pounds was mined out of the ground. And we're pulling down inventories. This can only go for so long. So that's really the story in uranium at the moment. Inventories will run out. No new mines can be built unless the uranium price goes up substantially into the $50, $60 range. So this is a price-driven story, a development-driven story for the sector. So, it really is an exciting time for anyone first looking at uranium investment and the stories that are out there.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about what you're doing over at GoviEX Uranium. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based entrepreneurs and companies coming up for you next, and we don't want you to miss any of it. So, and Daniel, thanks again for coming on the show. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it.